welcome back to my kitchen. Today I am just gonna share a simple, easy meal with y'all. This is kind of a mishmash of stuff. So typically what I do in the beginning of the week is I make chicken. So I just cook a whole bunch of chicken. That way we could put it in a whole bunch of recipes like fideo, tacos, chicken salad, salads with chicken, different types like that. So I'll be cooking my chicken in my cast iron skillet that's right here. And then to pair with this chicken that I'm gonna also make tonight for my husband's dinner, he'll also have fideo with it. I have not made fideo in a long time, and the reason why is because my husband hates tomatoes. And so, and the way that I make fideo, it is not as soupy as it's supposed to be. I make it more asada style, like very just like a noodle dish, but it's not soup. So I'm gonna make fideo back here, which for those, I'll share those ingredients with y'all in just a moment. But yeah, I'm just gonna be making some chicken and some fideo for tonight's dinner. And yeah, let's go ahead and get started. I also forgot to mention that I'm gonna be cooking up some roasted, sauteed vegetables. They are going bad in our fridge, so I'm just gonna go ahead and whip those up real quick, and that way they're vegetables that I like, so that way I can enjoy them tomorrow whenever I am gonna have my lunch. So let's get started.
For the fideo, you'll need 1 box of fideo noodles. You'll need 1 14.5 ounce can of petite diced tomatoes with green chilies. You'll need about a ½ teaspoon of salt and pepper, or to taste, a teaspoon of ground oregano, and a teaspoon of ground comino, or also known as cumin. You'll need 1/4 of a sweet yellow onion and about 5 to 6 cloves of garlic. The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and finely chop up our sweet yellow onion. I used about 1/4 of this onion just because it is so big. I only used about 1/4 of it because that's all I needed. I like to slice my onion pretty thin, and I like to dice it pretty thin as well because my husband doesn't really like a lot of onion, or he doesn't like to know that there's a lot of onion in there. So I go ahead and chop it up really fine, so that way when it becomes translucent and transparent, it's almost as if there's no onion in the dish at all. Here I'm just chopping up a few of my vegetables that were going bad. I chopped up 2 zucchinis that I had left in the fridge from my grocery haul that I got this past week. So I'm just chopping that up. I'm gonna go ahead and add that in towards the end of cooking the chicken. Once all the chicken is done and set aside, I'm just gonna use that same cast iron pan to cook up all my vegetables, which I will be cooking mushroom, zucchini, and a little bit of onion that was left over. I love mushrooms so much. I usually will make a truffle mushroom pizza on cauliflower crust, and it is so good. If you have not tried truffle oil, I would suggest that you should try it. It is super good, and I can't go back now. I just love truffle oil on my pizza, and it's the best thing of life. Here I'm just separating the cloves of garlic from the bulb, and I'm just gonna go ahead and use the back of my knife to go ahead and give that a good smack to get the skin off of the clove itself. And then I'm gonna also finely mince this and set it aside for whenever we start to saute. To my pan, I'm going to go ahead and add about a tablespoon of vegetable oil. Now you can use whatever oil that you prefer. I just like vegetable oil for this dish here. And on a medium-high heat, I'm just going to go ahead and saute these onions and these noodles and make sure that they get all nice and toasted. I do like to saute the onions for about 2 to 4 minutes just to kind of get them really translucent before adding in those noodles. And then for the noodles, I give them a toast for about 2 to 4 minutes as well, just to make sure I get them nice and toasted. before adding in my garlic. And then after adding in my garlic, I go ahead and use my seasonings. And I don't toast the garlic and the seasonings for too long because I don't want both of them to get bitter. I just want them to be complemented with a nice earthy flavor in the dish. And then once I give this a nice quick saute, a nice stir around, I go ahead and add in my can of petite diced tomatoes with green chilies. I do not drain this. It is going to be left with the juice. And then I add about 1.5 cups of water. It's just right above the noodle line. And I'm going to go ahead and let this simmer for about 15 to 25 minutes covered. Then to my cast iron skillet, I'm going to go ahead and add about 1 tablespoon of olive oil and let that heat up on medium heat while I prepare my chicken. For my chicken, I go ahead and slice it lengthwise in half. So that way my 4 chicken breasts now become 8. And I like to use my own homemade Italian seasoning blend that I created myself. And I do not add salt to my seasoning blend. I like to regulate the salt content that we do have in our dishes and on our protein especially. So I like to add my own salt first and then top it off with the seasoning that I created here. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and put that in my pan and let that cook until it's a little bit opaque white on the sides before flipping it over, so that way the crust can really look beautiful. And then this seasoning here, this is an orange pepper seasoning that we really love. I'll go ahead and leave a link to seasonings that I use that are already blended, and that way it'll be nice and easy for y'all to check that out. And then I go ahead and give this a good flip. I would say I probably flip the chicken after about like 8 to 10 minutes per side because they are thin. They do cook a lot quicker. And yeah, I just cook it there. I let the chicken rest for about 5 minutes before I go ahead and slice them up and put them in my storage container, so that way it's ready for the week. My number one recommendation is to try and get a cast iron skillet. I know it seems a little bit daunting to have one, but there are tons of videos out there that have helped me learn how to keep my pan seasoned and ready to go. And it's just so nice, and it really develops flavor and a nice crust on your chicken or even vegetables. And this thing can go in the oven, which is super cool. So yeah, I highly recommend to get a cast iron skillet. And look at our fideo, it is done. It looks so beautiful. It is spicy, I will say that. If you are not a fan of spice, or if you can't, or if you're not able to eat spice, then I would recommend to just get the petite diced tomatoes without green chilies. And then that way everything is good to go and there's no pain involved, you know, if you can't handle the spicy.
The fideo is so good, a little spice. And then with the chicken, you try this.
For our Italian meatball subs, you will be needing about 1 cup of pasta sauce of your choice, about 4 submarine sandwich rolls, 5 slices of provolone cheese, about 4 tablespoons of Parmesan cheese, and a package of frozen Italian meatballs. You can choose to do turkey meatballs if you'd like. I just prefer the beef and pork option, so that is what we're doing here. And then I'm just gonna line my baking sheet with parchment paper, and I'm gonna go ahead and hollow out my submarine sandwich rolls. Here I'm just gonna be cooking only 3 of them, just because it's only my husband and I, so I just wanted to do something really quick, and that 4th one I ended up using for a different recipe. So I'm just gonna slice these almost all the way open, and then I'm just gonna hollow out the shell of the bread rolls, and that way the meatballs have a nice place to stay put instead of sliding around and just falling out of your sandwich. And also it reduces the amount of bread by a little bit of what you are consuming. While I'm preparing the sandwiches, I just go ahead and preheat my oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. And while that's preheating, I'm going to go ahead and microwave my meatballs. I'm going to go ahead and heat them through per package instructions. I think for mine, it was like for every 4 meatballs, you're going to heat it up about 1.5 minutes. So I followed those instructions. And then using a little bit of olive oil, I just drizzle a little bit on each sub sandwich roll and top it off with about 2 tablespoons of sauce per sub roll, and just spread that out with the back of my spoon. And I'm just going to do that per roll. Now, you certainly can add as much or as little of sauce as you'd like. I'm not too big of a saucy person, so I would say that I add about a medium amount of sauce. I know some people that really like sauce on their sub sandwiches, so to each their own. You go ahead and add as much sauce or as little as sauce as you'd like. Next, I'm going to go ahead and add my provolone cheese to my sub sandwich rolls. I just tear that in half and I use about 1 1/4 or 1 1/2 slices of provolone cheese per roll, and just laying that down. And then I'll grab my meatballs, lay them right on top of that cheese, and then I'll add a little bit more sauce right on top of those meatballs before topping it off with a little bit of Parmesan cheese, and then setting that aside before baking that in the oven. So I'll just continue those steps on each roll before placing it in the 400 degree oven for about 5 to 10 minutes. You just want to keep an eye on that and make sure that the cheese is not burning, and you just want the cheese to melt and get really bubbly and everything to just meld together. And I just put it as is. I don't fold the sandwiches on top of one another before putting it in the oven. This recipe is honestly one of my favorite and quick, easy recipes because the meatballs are already made. It just makes life a little bit easier and a little bit simpler, especially if you're just really tired and you don't want to do a whole main dish and sides and everything like that for your family. This is super quick, super easy, and it takes almost little effort because everything is basically prepared. And these sub sandwiches are so good. I will say sometimes I do add 4 meatballs per sub, but 3 meatballs is sufficient amount to enjoy and be filled. And for our last recipe of this video, I'm going to be sharing with y'all my Crockpot barbecue rib recipe. So for this recipe, you'll need 1 package of baby back ribs, about 1/4 of a sweet yellow onion, 6 to 8 cloves of garlic, some salt-free fajita seasoning, kosher salt, and you'll use barbecue sauce of your choice. I love Stubbs barbecue sauce, so that's what I'm using here. I went ahead and chopped up my onion and my garlic just to give it a rough chop. It's just going to bring some aromatic flavors into the ribs itself when it's in the crock pot. And here I'm just going to go ahead and pat off all the liquid, all the meat juice off of the back of the ribs, just because we want to make this a nice smooth transition to get this silver skin off of the back of the ribs. Now, silver skin, if you do not remove it from your ribs, it will make a really tough rib and very chewy. So it's very vital for you to do this part. If you can ask your butcher, or at your grocery store, you can look for it already prepared. But if you don't, you can certainly just pull it off yourself. You just want to create a handle and then rip it off from there. And then I'm just patting off the rest of the liquid from the ribs, so that way we don't want to cut ourselves. We don't want things to slip and slide everywhere. And I'm just going to go ahead and cut this in half. That way it can be more manageable for our crock pot when we put it in there. measuring out about a tablespoon of kosher salt. I'm going to go ahead and coat the front and the back of the ribs with this amount of salt. And you really want to pat this into the rib itself, just so that way, you know, it's not going anywhere. We want those salt flavors to really break through the meat enzymes and really make it tender. And then going in with my salt-free fajita seasoning, I'm just going to go ahead and really provide a nice thick coat on both sides of the ribs itself. Now you can use whichever rub you like. I like fajita seasoning. I've certainly used pork rub seasoning before and it's turned out really good. But this is just the seasoning that I like to do for something quick and easy, and I know it's going to taste really good. So to my crockpot basin, I'm just going to get a little bit of aluminum foil here, and I'm going to bundle that up into a ball roughly the size of a smaller football. We want it to just kind of be loose. We're going to go ahead and stand up our ribs on top of that. You'll see what I mean in just a minute. But I am going to coat the basin there with some Pam nonstick spray because, you know, we want a nice easy cleanup at the end of this. And here I am placing the ribs right up against that ball of foil that we made. We want them to stand up in the crock pot, because if the ribs do lay down in there, they're gonna really fall apart everywhere, and you know, it's not gonna be a very enjoyable experience of actually biting into ribs. So we want to make sure that they are standing up. And then here I'm just gonna go ahead and add in my garlic and my onion before I put it into the crock pot holder where it heats up. So I'm gonna go ahead and cook this on low for 8 hours, and then once it is done cooking, we will need a pan that is lined with foil, and very carefully we're going to go ahead and remove those ribs. You know, they are super tender at this point and we want them to stay intact, so we're just going to place them on our foil sheet pan there, and then we're going to go ahead and coat them with some barbecue sauce. Make sure you drain it properly before putting it on the pan. You know, it's all that liquid there. You can certainly reserve it for a stock or something like that, but typically it's not too much to make into a stock for me. So I'm just going to use this bristle brush. I want to say it's a basting brush. I'm honestly not too sure what it's called, but it is perfect for adding on barbecue sauce into every single crevice on the ribs. So I just get a little bit of barbecue sauce, create a nice thin layer, turn it over, and then really pack on a nice thick layer on the top of the rib. We just really want to make sure every single inch of our rib is coated in barbecue sauce, and that way, you know, you get a bit of wonderful flavor in each bite. This time you're going to want to go ahead and preheat your oven to 385 degrees Fahrenheit. We want to make sure everything is already heated up and ready to go, so when we stick those ribs in there, we only have to cook them for 10 minutes. placing the ribs right into our preheated oven. We're gonna go ahead and bake that for about 10 minutes, just so that way the barbecue sauce can really stick onto those ribs and develop a nice crust. I love these ribs so much. They are super good. If you are not one that is familiar with cooking on a grill outside like me, this is a nice method to use because you're inside, it's a crock pot, it does its own thing, you're not monitoring it all day, your hair's not getting smoky. So I love this method. It just makes life a little bit easier. And then here I am, I'm just gonna go ahead and cut these ribs up. I am just pairing this off with a nice side salad for tonight, but you can certainly choose whatever side you like. We do potato salad, mac and cheese, we've done rice before. Really, it's all up to you and what's comfortable in your home. But look at that crust, y'all. It is so delicious, and I really hope you do try this out and let me know what you think. I actually learned this recipe from my mom. She just wanted to try it out one day, and I guess she found it on the internet. I'm not too sure how she figured it out, but she tweaked it a little bit, and then I tweaked it a lot of bit, and here we are, y'all. Now look how beautiful that looks. It's so juicy, and I love it so much. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's video. If you did like it, make sure to leave a comment down below and a like. I would love to know if you've tried out these recipes, or if you have other recipes that may even be better that you've loved and is your tried and true. But thank you so much for sticking around and being here. If you are new, maybe consider subscribing. I do post content once a week on my channel here of cleaning and cooking and organization. So I hope to see y'all next week, and have a great one. Bye, y'all.